Hello friends and welcome back to Figure Study, where we are looking at the Chevy Aveo Swerve, which I guess is was once a very difficult figure to get a hold of. I'm not entirely sure how much that may have changed or stayed the same these days, because when I got this guy, I managed to get him for a very reasonable, only slightly more than typical deluxe size price on eBay, so I guess the rush is over. Granted, this is like several years after the fact, but something to be aware of, I guess. Unfortunately, mine has this little black smudge there, but whatever. But yes, Swerve, specifically Aveo Swerve. I know there's some kind of history behind this, and how you could only get a Swerve by like doing a test drive of the Aveo in like certain areas, like possibly Canada and in the UK, I think. But that's as much as I know. And what's interesting about this is it feels like one of the rare instances where they really tried to capture the official vehicle as faithfully as they could in a sort of standard deluxe size figure. I know they do similar things with some stuff for Masterpiece figures, like Masterpiece Wheeljack and stuff, because they're based on real world cars. But it's rare to me, as far as I'm aware, that they try to focus on like licensed vehicles. Like, I know it does happen, especially in the Michael Bay movies, but it's rare in my mind, at least, that they try this hard to really push out the look of the vehicle mode as opposed to something that's vaguely reminiscent of the official vehicle that they're licensing or not licensing and just homaging. But I'm also talking out of my butt, so I could be completely wrong in that fact. I'm just going based on what I've observed. And I'm not a huge car person, so I couldn't really tell you how accurate any of this stuff or other stuff is. But regardless, I do kind of like how Swerve is just this little unassuming coupe. Like, this is just something that a family would take to go to the mall or something. And for what it is, it's surprisingly well detailed. There's not a ton of paint in robot mode, but I don't think it necessarily needs it, and I'll get into that when we get to robot mode. But like the vehicle mode, you've got the silver trim, the individual, well, not individually painted, but like the lights are separated out. The Chevy logo there is painted. It's a little lopsided, but it's there. The freaking door handles have been painted. The rims painted. The side mirrors not painted. I guess technically they are painted because I think this is actually clear or translucent blue plastic, but those could do with a dab of silver, but not a huge deal. Little lights on the sides there. Not sure if silver is the right color there. And then the front could probably do with some detailing down here, but other than that, like, you got the silver and black and the Chevy logo there, the light blue for the headlights. There's some really nice detailing in this vehicle mode. I'm not super used to it, but it looks good. And it even doesn't really bother me that they've got the translucent plastic that shows all the robot bits on the inside, because it's a darker shade. So yeah, you can see the robot bits, but because it's a darker tint, it's not as egregious in my mind. They also did some neat stuff where they actually trimmed the windows in black, which is not something I'm used to seeing either. It's a nice detail, though. It definitely makes them come together as windows, and it seems much more realistic to me. And I like that the windows are all the way around rather than just like the windshield and then everything else is painted or solid plastic or just like the windshield and passenger doors. There's not a whole lot for me to say about this vehicle mode because it's just an unassuming coupe. But for what it is, it looks good and the detailing is nice. And I will get to that Autobot logo in a second. But anyway, in terms of size, it's, about typical deluxe size. What's interesting to me about Swerve is the vehicle looks like it should be a little bit shorter and wider. Like, I always just kind of expected it to be that way, but it's actually rather long and narrow, which I guess is kind of true of all cars in a way, but I feel like it's still deluxe size, just, Hound is wider and stumpier and Swerve is longer and narrower. And Swerve is definitely smaller than Duck Tank. And real quick, before getting to the transformation, I will talk about this more in robot mode as well, but this Autobot logo is disappointing. It looks so muddy and washed out, and it's like dark red on red is just a bad choice. They really should have considered doing this either in white or a much, much darker color so that it stands out better, or possibly doing the logo with like the red with the white trim so that it stands out better. And instead, you get this thing that sort of looks like a birthmark rather than an Autobot logo. That's what we got. Anyway, let's get to the robot mode. My apologies if I didn't get a lot of that on camera. It's my fault. I should have held it back a little further. But we got there. Here we have Aveo Swerve in his robot mode. And it wasn't the semi-exclusive nature of this figure that interested me. It was specifically this robot mode. I like this robot mode. It's really interesting what they do with some of his stuff. Granted, the vehicle hood for a chest is absolutely not new, but some of the other stuff is really interesting. Like, the rest of the car just kind of disappears. You've got the doors on his shoulders, and then the hood just kind of folds up nicely, or not hood, the roof kind of folds up nicely on the backs of his forearms. The windshield just straight back. He's got like no kibble back there. And the rest of the car is just all in his legs, but it folds up and around in a way that it works. Kind of makes it look like he's got baggy pants on. And it works really well. This is actually a really interesting design. And I am super, super into it. Particularly the doors on the shoulders. I don't know, something about that is really appealing to me. I feel like these could do with being able to turn a little bit maybe, but whatever. It's still interesting. It's an interesting profile that he makes. And as I said, I think this is very cool. This is the whole reason why I wanted to get this figure, just because it's an interesting robot mode. And I like the fact that this is a licensed car, where obviously the point of the whole thing was going to be to kind of drive the, no pun intended, kind of drive the vehicle mode first and foremost, but they didn't compromise the robot mode to do it. It's this really interesting marriage of licensing and actually good toy design. And here, there's no new paint to speak of aside from the head. The revealed robot bits are just blank plastic, but the shades they used and the way they mixed things up, and the way that the red for the vehicle mode is integrated here, I don't mind the lack of paint at all. I mean, sure, absolutely, there's some fine details in the shoulders and the waist section and stuff that would probably pop really well if you put some detail in there, but I don't feel like he needs it. This doesn't feel like a character or a figure that really desperately needs paint. I think a lot of that, too, is the detailing that's going on in the chest there, but it breaks it up so nicely, and you go from this entirely red car to this black and gray robot with car parts for a shirt and pants, I guess. I appreciate the interesting nature of his silhouette. As I said, the shoulder doors, the sort of baggy pants, boots, whatever. It's good stuff. And as for the details, a lot of it is not necessarily new. Like, you got the feet, which are fine, and the ankles, these actually, it's kind of cool how that works. Like, you got the wheels on the inside, which is not super great, but they kind of try to mimic that here as well. I feel like having these on the outside would look a little bit better, but I'm not entirely sure how they could have done that without like some major engineering changes. There's some detailing on the thighs. The midsection has some nice detailing in there, and this little abdomen bit could probably do with a little paint, but the way he's angled, you generally don't see it that much. I also like that you can see the front wheels inside his chest there. I love how those disappear when he goes into robot mode. It's surprisingly clean. And you've got the mechanical detailing in the shoulders and the arms there, which, as I said, could probably do with a little paint, but it's fine for what it is. The movable hands. And I like these little kind of back of the hand cuff protector things. Makes it look like he's wearing some kind of armored gauntlets. And the hood is just the car hood. And then there is the head. Now, before we get to the head, I want to talk about that Autobot logo a little bit more, just in terms of how it's kind of a muddy mess and disappointing. It's the same deal as with the vehicle mode, you know? It's just a shame that they couldn't contrast it better. Makes me kind of tempted to take a white outline repro label and stick it on there. They really should have done something else with that Autobot logo. Anyway, looking at the head is interesting. It's very different from a typical Transformer head, both like more in a classic sense and in a movieverse sense. There's something about it that's, I don't know, it doesn't strike me as Transformers-y at all. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely doesn't make me think Transformer when I look at that head. It almost looks more like, I want to say Kamen Rider or Super Sentai-ish, just in the way that it's kind of like this sleek helmet-looking thing with the visor and the faceplate, and the light piping that has this like tiny little strip back there, so the light piping doesn't work that well. In this case, I think it's fine because it's, you know, this really dark strip that looks like a visor over like red and the silver and gray for the mouthplate thing. And as I said, the back is surprisingly clean for what he does. And yeah, it's a really cool design. I don't know. It's I feel like I'm not being super specific here, but I like the head sculpt despite it not really fitting in with Transformers, but like the robot mode is surprisingly unique in ways that I really like. And I am super glad I got him for a reasonable price, because as much as I like this figure and as much as I think the robot mode looks cool, I would probably be a little disappointed with him if I paid $80, $100, $150, however much he used to go for back in the day. I would have been disappointed paying that much. I got him for about $30, and that's perfectly reasonable in my mind. Anyway, size-wise, he is taller than a Siege Deluxe. Not by a whole lot, but he is taller. And there he is with the duck tank. And that is going to do it for Aveo Swerve. I feel like I've been repeating myself way too much as I talk about this guy, so I'm just going to leave it at that. I have said my piece, so what do you all think of Aveo Swerve? Is this a figure that you've always wanted to get your hands on but were never able to? Do you just not care? Is this a figure that you do have? And in any of those scenarios, is there anything about this version of Swerve that bothers you? Anything that you particularly like? I mean, I know in terms of the fact that he's called Swerve, this is like super not Swerve in terms of depictions of the character. Even I know that, but I'm curious what you all think. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And while you're at it, also feel free to like, subscribe, or if you're feeling generous, but no pressure, you can also buy me a coffee. Link in the description down below. Any of those things would make me a happy Rob. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.